Understanding Adolf Hitler. Was he born evil or made? Adolf Hitler. This is one of history's darkest names. A man responsible for the death of millions and the destruction of multiple cities. From German cities destroyed as a result of the war he started, to the displacement of children in the city of London as he bombed it for 8 months straight, and occupying countries like Poland, Belgium, France, the Netherlands, and others too many to name. This video seeks to answer an important question about Hitler. Was he born that way? Or did the world shape him into what he became? Understanding Hitler isn't to excuse his evil actions. It's to ask a terrifying question. Could it happen again? Strap your seatbelts, like this video, subscribe to our channel, and join us on this journey to understanding if monsters can be born or if they're made. We'll start with some quick-fire information about Adolf Hitler that you should have at the back of your palms. He was born on the 20th of April, 1889, in Austria, to Alois Hitler, a father who was a customs official, later retired, and Clara Hitler, a mother who was a domestic servant. Linz, the capital city of Upper Austria, remained Adolf Hitler's favorite city, and he wished to be buried there. Like any other child, Adolf Hitler had dreams of what he wanted to become. In his case, he wanted to study art and become an artist. At some point, he used the allowance he received to continue drawing to support himself in Vienna. Unfortunately, he failed to secure entry to the Academy of Fine Arts. However, he kept earning a living by painting postcards and advertisements for a while. Hitler's relationship with his parents could never have been more different. To his mother, he was a sweet, sweet boy. He had such a loving relationship with her that he was devastated when she died of cancer in 1907. He was 17. Later in his autobiography, Hitler mentioned that he honored his father but loved his mother. And in his words, his mother's death was a dreadful blow. Hitler's doctor, Bloch, corroborated this when he recalled seeing no one so grief-stricken as Adolf after her death. On the other hand, his relationship with his father was rocky. Alois was notorious for his short temper, and Adolf was always on the receiving end of that. Alois beat his wife and children at the slightest provocation. He demanded absolute obedience and had no friends, took to no one, and could be very heartless, according to how Hitler's half-brother described him. Now, an interesting piece about Adolf's parents is that they were cousins. Yes, Alois Hitler married his cousin after losing his 2 previous wives to a separation and tuberculosis, respectively. Clara Hitler was a maid to the first wife and was already involved with Alois then. While still in his formative years at school, Hitler was exposed to German nationalist ideas popular in Linz at the time. He was introduced to the ethnic German nationalism of Georg Ritter von Schönerer. Georg was an Austrian landowner and politician who argued that ethnic Germans should be united in one country and oppose the multinational Austro-Hungarian Empire. He also promoted racial anti-Semitism. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, at the time, was a multinational constitutional monarchy in Central Europe. It existed from 1867 to 1918 and was formed by a compromise between the Austrian Empire and the Kingdom of Hungary. According to the agreement, both entities retained their own parliaments, governments, and some degree of self-governance, but remained to be ruled by a single emperor. While the Austro-Hungarian Empire was multinational, it contained a significant ethnic German-speaking population, which politicians like Georg were pushing to unite in one country. Adolf Hitler clocked 24 in 1913 and moved to Munich. He did this to avoid punishment for evading his military service obligation to Austria-Hungary. This, of course, made sense to him, as he was already exposed to the idea of German nationalism. He financed his move with the last of his inheritance and supported himself by selling his watercolors and sketches in Munich. When World War I broke out, Hitler was ecstatic. He tried to enlist in the Imperial German Army 2 days after the conflict's start. However, he was sent away as the military did not need more volunteers at the time. A couple of days later, he was ordered to report at Munich's recruit depot. One fact stood against Hitler joining the German army. He was a foreign citizen. He had to request permission from Bavarian King Louis III to be allowed to serve in the Bavarian army. One day after submitting that request, he was notified that he would be permitted to join the 16th Bavarian Reserve Infantry Regiment. The Bavarian Army was part of the Imperial German Army before and during World War I. In the army, Hitler continued to put forth his German nationalist ideas, which he developed from a young age. After just a couple of weeks of military training, Hitler's unit deployed to Belgium in the fall of 1914. Hitler and his unit fought at the First Battle of Ypres, October-November 1914, which was Hitler's only frontline battle experience. For most of the war, Hitler was a courier conveying messages from the leadership to the front. This was also a dangerous task. Hitler was injured at least twice during the war. First, during the Battle of the Somme in October 1916, he was wounded in his left thigh when a shell exploded at the entrance to the dispatch runner's dugout. Then on the 15th of October 1918, he and several comrades were temporarily blinded due to a British mustard gas attack. Equally, he was decorated twice for bravery. He received the Iron Cross Second Class in 1914 and the Iron Cross First Class in 1918. This was an honor rarely given to a lance corporal that he was at the time. His first-class Iron Cross award was recommended by Lieutenant Hugo Gutmann, a Jewish adjutant in the List Regiment. During his second injury while he was hospitalized, Hitler learned that Germany had surrendered in the war. This made him very sad and disappointed. He was outraged by the subsequent Treaty of Versailles in 1919, which forced Germany to accept responsibility for starting the war and deprive Germany of various territories. According to him, this was the moment he decided to become a politician. In his own words, "When I was confined to bed, the idea came to me that I would liberate Germany, that I would make it great. I knew immediately that it would be realized." Still in 1919, Hitler joined the German Workers' Party, DAP, where he was attracted to the founder Anton Drexler's anti-Semitic, nationalist, anti-capitalist, and anti-Marxist ideas. Recall that he had initially been exposed to these ideas in his formative years in Austria. Drexler was impressed with Hitler's oratory skills and invited him to join the DAP. He quickly became the party's most active orator. Hitler's considerable oratory and propaganda skills were appreciated by the party leadership as they began to attract huge crowds to hear his speeches. He had growing popularity. At a point, the party began charging an entry fee for visitors to hear his speeches, and Hitler had become the chief of propaganda for the party. To him, this was the way to bring nationalism and all the dangerous ideas that had formed him to the public. The German Workers' Party only lasted from 5th January 1919 until 24th February 1920. This what formed into the National Socialist German Workers' Party, commonly known as the Nazi Party. Hitler led the renaming and had gotten too popular that one of the founders of the German Workers' Party, Harrer, resigned in disagreement. Hitler rose to become leader of the Nazi Party in 1921 after threatening to leave. He quickly consolidated power by purging the party of his rivals and critics. One coup, a prison sentence, and an election later, Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany. The Nazi Party was now very popular, but they haven't still gotten the top spot, the presidency. Hitler was formally appointed Germany's new Chancellor on the 30th of January 1933. As Chancellor, Hitler advised President Paul von Hindenburg to pass a decree that nullified many of the key civil liberties of German citizens. This decree was as the legal basis for the imprisonment of anyone considered to be opponents of the Nazis and to suppress publications not considered friendly to the Nazi cause. He used this decree to effectively eliminate his political opponents. He had ordered the construction of the first Nazi concentration camp at Dachau for communists and other political opponents. Hitler's continued use of violence wasn't surprising and could very well be linked to the relationship he had with his father. The final straw came when Hindenburg died and Hitler merged the chancellery with the presidency into the title of Führer, leader. On the 19th August 1934, the German public voted 90% in favor of Adolf Hitler becoming Führer, leader of Germany, combining the powers of chancellor and president in a referendum. Hitler had become very popular at this point. Absolute powers had been given to a man who has held very dangerous views from his formative years. The nightmare began. The first stop for Hitler was the persecution of Jews. Remember who wasn't a fan of a multi-ethnic society right from childhood? Exactly. There were roughly 500,000 German Jews who made up less than 1% of the country's population in 1933. They started being persecuted. Jews were banned or restricted from several professions in the civil service. Laws were passed that reserved full citizenship rights for those of German or related blood, restricted Jews' economic activity, and criminalized new marriages and sexual relationships between Jews and non-Jewish Germans. Jewish students were gradually forced out of the school system. Some localities enacted restrictions governing where Jews were allowed to live or conduct business. In 1938 and 1939, Jews were barred from additional occupations, and their businesses were expropriated to force them out of the economy. The Nazi government wanted to force all Jews to leave Germany. Out of the 560,000 Jews in the country, 130,000 were able to emigrate between 1933 and 1937. By the end of 1939, most Jews who could emigrate had already done so. Those who remained behind were disproportionately elderly, poor, or female. In October 1938, Germany deported many Polish Jews in response to a Polish law that enabled the revocation of citizenship for Polish Jews living abroad. During this period, Germany under Hitler had started to become more aggressive. They had taken control of Austria in March 1938, and no one batted an eyelid. Hitler started pressing further to take control of an area of Czechoslovakia, modern-day Czech Republic and Slovakia. This area had a predominantly ethnic German population. Britain and France conceded the territory to Germany in the Munich Agreement and got Hitler to promise no further territorial demands. But who decides to trust Hitler? Soon afterwards, Germany and Italy forced Czechoslovakia to cede additional territory to Hungary, and Poland annexed the Trans-Olsa region of Czechoslovakia. Hitler was pissed that the British didn't let him seize all of Czechoslovakia. In March 1939, Germany invaded the remainder of Czechoslovakia and subsequently split it into the German Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia and a pro-German client state, the Slovak Republic. He kept on with his demands, and this time, he wanted the free city of Danzig in Poland. This was a semi-autonomous city-state created in 1920 as a result of the Treaty of Versailles after World War I. Seeing this, the United Kingdom and France guaranteed their support for Polish independence. Shortly after, Germany and Italy formalized their own alliance with the Pact of Steel, and Hitler accused the United Kingdom and Poland of trying to encircle Germany, so he renounced all previous treaties and agreements. On 29 August, Hitler demanded that a Polish representative immediately travel to Berlin to negotiate the handover of Danzig. The Poles refused to comply with the German demands, and on the night of 30th August, in a confrontational meeting with the British ambassador Neville Henderson, Ribbentrop, a top-ranking German Nazi politician, declared that Germany considered its claims rejected. On the 1st of September 1939, Germany invaded Poland, and this triggered World War II. World War II went on to cause at least 70 million deaths, more than half of which were civilians. And this all links back to Adolf Hitler. Once a sweet boy who loved his mom and would do anything for her, his exposure to dangerous rhetoric and beliefs led him down an evil path. Hitler wasn't born evil, he was made. Losing his mother, his rocky and violent relationship with his father, listening and internalizing dangerous ideas in his formative years, and his lack of self-awareness and responsibility all formed the man he became. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel to learn more about stories that happened way back. Help us achieve our goal of hitting 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year.